Great, I'll call to order the Very Unified Union School District, it's January 10th, 6 p.m.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any additional deletions? And then motion to approve the agenda. Very good.
I got a few. I'm wondering, just because we have the budget on the agenda tonight, if we should move 6.4 in old business to the front and get that stuff done and out of the way, and we can focus on the budget. For one. Second, does special articles need its own agenda because it's an action item? I don't know.
I don't.
So I
don't know.
I know that it's usually you approve the budget and then you for city. I don't know if that's the case for the school board.
With special articles of the money. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's okay. Third one, Giuliano. I don't know if you intended to put it into executive session, the one we discussed earlier today. We agreed to provide information by the previous Friday. That wasn't the fact for this thing. So I was busy all day. I didn't have time to review that or analyze it. So I think that should get bumped to the next meeting.
You're talking about the superintendent evaluation.
Yes, I didn't know if we could have that time. Okay. Yep.
Okay, so 6.4 and all of 7 ahead. And what was the other one?
Right after the current.
Yes.
Do we need a specific agenda item for special articles? Yeah, I'm not sure.
I didn't. So.
And I had one last one, Julian. What is the executive session for that we have on the agenda tonight? This is personnel updates.
Yeah, you brought those up. There were 2.
Okay, but it's got to. So if you recall, we got guidance from Pietro on this needs to be more specific. So that
Yes.
Correct, and I have the yes, it covers that.
okay. Well,
And
Pietro said it needs to be more specific and detailed than just personnel updates. So that was the guidance he sent to you after you questioned him. So good. Thank you.
Can, regarding old business, could we just not put those right underneath consent agenda?
Right after that.
I mean, there's,
but
It was 7.2 we had to discuss.
yeah.
alright,
Simon?
Is there, can I just clarify, are we, the suggestion to move 7.1 and 7.2 under the consent agenda or just move them out of order before?
Terry's was to move them out of order.
Yeah, move them out of the beginning of current business.
Okay, and I'm unclear what Michael's asking for.
and it doesn't matter because it was, my comment was just to put it in the consent agenda. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the amendments that Terry requested to move 7.1, 7.2, and 6.4 out of order. Was that it?
There was the issue of the other item for executive session.
But it
Evaluation.
wasn't added, so we don't have to, you asked to have it not added, so it's not on there,
Oh, okay.
right? Second?
Simon with a motion, Sarah with a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Any public comment? Correct, sorry.
Items, I think you remember said items.
Doreen Dorfman.
Dorian?
Hello, thank you. My name is Doreen Dorfman and I teach in Barrytown as a middle school literacy interventionist. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My colleague and I teach some 50 to 60 students each semester whose reading skills are far below grade level. Today in Vermont schools, we have middle and high school students who do not know all their letter sounds of the alphabet, not to mention all 44 speech sounds in English. The truth is 95% of children can learn to read on grade level with excellent instruction beginning in kindergarten, though currently in Vermont and the nation, only 33% of children read proficiently in 3rd grade. One of Barry's greatest accomplishments is our focus on providing reading instruction to all students who need help, based on valid, reliable assessment data that tells teachers and interventionists who needs instruction and in what areas. In the 22-23 school year, last year, Barrytown middle school students with special education and received their literacy services from an interventionist improved by 49 points on the Renaissance Star assessment, a percentile increase of nearly 7.5%. Among the 55 students we taught altogether, 91% improved in word reading, 87% increased their reading rate, and 69% increased their passage reading accuracy. When children are effectively taught to read, schools experience improvement in classroom management and school climate, with reductions in behavior problems and absenteeism. Longitudinal studies have shown an association between poor reading skills and mental health problems, specifically anxiety and depression, as well as greater likelihood of failing and dropping out of school, reduced employment opportunities, greater need for public assistance, incarceration, poorer health outcomes, homelessness, and even shorter life expectancy. We've been studying this a long time. Low literacy impacts the next generation and deepens the cycle of poverty. Barry schools are on the right path to achieve our goal for all students becoming successful readers and learners. This attracts top teacher candidates and engages them on our journey. While school-wide change can take 5 or 7 or even 10 years to see measurable growth, our students in literacy intervention are seeing that change right now, guiding them on a rock-solid path to become highly skilled, engaged citizens of the Barry community. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment for items not on the agenda? Student voice? Consent agenda, and these are the regular meeting minutes, December 20th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from December 20th, 2023.
Second.
Chris Parker with the motion, signing with a second. Any discussion?
I have one thing on the third page of the minutes, middle paragraph, the very first paragraph. I had asked to have an attachment A. It's mentioned here in the minutes, but there is no attachment A in here.
That was added to the addendum.
Can you addendum?
Not the addendum that we have now. It's in the record.
Where?
The addendum for that meeting, December
Yes.
20th.
Yes.
I didn't put it in for that particular meeting until that meeting night, so I don't know how it could have gotten in there. Okay, never mind, let's move on.
Anything else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
warrant approval for December 20 and December 28, 2023.
I make a motion to approve warrants as presented for December 20th and December 28th.
We second.
Oh, sorry, Nancy.
That's fine. I suppose was. I second it. Thank you.
Sonia with the motion, Nancy with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll take 6.4 and then 7.1 and 7.2. The information request, Nancy had some requests for information about overtime, correct? Could you please explain what you need for those?
I would like the number of, well, this relates to the budget of 60,000 that's being requested. So I would like the number of hours, for fiscal year 22 and 23. And I also would like the overtime pay, the cost for those number of hours. I would also like to know the, hours that support the 60,000, how they came to that.
So you would like someone to go through 2022 and 2023 to dig out all that information?
I don't know what the process is.
My understanding.
I sent an email.
My understanding is that the process.
I don't, it should be, readily available.
It's-
Everybody gets wages, compensation. I was told that they have access to, everybody can log in online and see what their wages are. That's
So,
just basic information.
but it's on a different system.
So I still want the information, and I still think it should be provided to support the request of $60,000 in overtime.
Okay, Paul?
I'm just gonna comment that this should be readily available on our new system. What is being asked here seems like a simple question. What are the justifications for adding the $60,000 to this budget line item? And where are the backups that support that? I think if you can't produce that, then maybe we don't need it. If you can produce it, then we need it. That there's a lot of hours, if you calculate $60,000 and if we look into what we pay for overtime, that's practically 1,800 hours of overtime. Are we putting that in? We can just do the straight math, and that's all we're asking for. It's a reasonable request. You know, I thought about this and I wondered why we needed to ask a question about whether or not $60,000 needed to be added to the budget. But if you go looking for it, it's hard to track it within a line by line. It's blended within a salary matrix. Do we need it or don't we? That's what answers the question.
Nancy?
I think it's important to be able to have the people that requested the budget increases to be able to substantiate why they did. I mean, there must be something that you looked at to be able to state that you need 60,000. And to Paul's point, I did a quick calculation. I came up with about 1,800 hours. At 1,800 hours, if you do the calculation on the, looking at what the custodians get paid, have you considered hiring somebody full-time?
Engaging in discussion, I didn't think we.
Because if have you considered hiring a full-time? I mean, with 1,800 hours of overtime, it would be cheaper, just to let you know, it'd be cheaper to hire a full-time person.
Chris?
I mean, just one of the many issues with this is that we have serious staffing shortages with custodians, which is leading to overtime requests. We've had 2 resignations recently. We're constantly trying to find qualified people. So what's happening is our existing people, like which is happening across many positions in the district, are having to pick up the slack. That does lead to overtime. So yeah, we are trying to fill positions constantly. But it doesn't always work out that way, and the work still needs to be done. The events still need to be covered. Many of these are over weekends, evenings, so those hours add up. So yes,
So just provide the supporting documentation for that, to justify.
I think the idea of supporting documentation is a lengthy process to get. So in order for someone to do that, they have to put down their current work, the work that they're actually doing right now that we're paying them for, to look for that information.
Point of order.
Sorry, Sarah?
I just point of order. That takes priority. The chair is participating in debate. That's not allowed.
Thank you.
Understood. Sarah?
Just curious if your quick calculation included payroll taxes, because you would need to include that too. So Medicare, Social Security,
Yes, it is.
payroll tax.
Yes.
Okay, because I would have come up with a different number, so just curious.
So you're wanting documentation of the amount spent in overtime per
I want to
person?
know the number of hours. Everybody got the email on what I was requesting. I requested this on December 13th. I mean, and here it is, January 10th, and it's not a complicated request. It's the number of hours of overtime and the expense that went with the number of hours, the pay.
So I think I get, are you able to run a payroll showing year to date?
Year to date, yes.
I would say just run that. It gives you the information you're looking for and you can surf through it yourself.
She already provided me with the budget, total wages and budget amount, but that doesn't separate out any pay, other pay that went into those wages.
Right.
But
So when you requested information, I explained that I couldn't extrapolate the overtime hours from all of the other wages, because custodians get, they do building checks, they do events, there's alarms that they come in for, there's trainings. So what I said was, in the old system, I wasn't able to gather the amount of overtime hours. So instead, Jamie went through and sent very detailed explanation of the items that people, that the custodians do overtime for. Again, it's sports events, it's training on weekends, it's alarms, if they're, for security alarms and things like that. Building checks are every weekend day or during breaks, vacations. They're at least 2.5 hours per day through the year. And I actually looked at and just randomly took a pay period to look at what a person might get just for one pay period. And this is a person at Berry City, and they had building checks for 9 hours. They had asked me their regular pay for 80 hours. They had overtime for 5.25 and sick time for 6. So this particular person had 15.25 overtime hours in one pay period, and the overtime rate was $43 an hour. So it does add up.
Does the same revolving question still exist?
Mhm.
Why $60,000? There has to be a backup as to why that's in the budget for a request.
Right.
So
And also to be
you're
clear-
taking an average to get to that. That's the
Yes,
question.
and also to be clear, we have always added to the wage line for custodians for overtime, but this year, but typically I haven't added enough. And this year I noted that we were putting $20,000 per building in. We've always added to that wage line for overtime. But again,
I still want the information. Okay. Thank you.
any other board members? Simon?
So Just theoretically, if I want something, can I just ask for it and require any of our administrators to stop the work that the district needs them to do so that they can go ahead and research something that I would really like? Or should we vote on it as a board, whether it should move forward with this request?
We speak as a board, not as individuals.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Any other board members? Sorry.
So the first question I have is, in Lisa, I think you answered my question. You said you couldn't differentiate overtime hours, but you just said you did an analysis and were able to tell how many hours an employee had. So the question I was going to ask was, how do we pay them an overtime rate if we don't know what their overtime hours are?
So we have timesheets and they complete the timesheet.
Right. So the
And
payroll.
this information I gathered from the system this year. I can't go back into FY 22 and 23 because it's in a different system.
So right.
I can go back through thousands of timesheets.
Sure. So January through June 30 is in the old system.
Yeah.
And then this is, so how will we do W-2s at the end of the year?
The system, we brought that information into the system.
But not payroll information.
But we'll have, right, not specific details, but we do have
Numbers. Okay.
Yes.
And then Chris, you had made a point that we're short-staffed. And I remember Jamie saying that we're short-staffed. And I think there's actually an additional custodian in this proposed budget as well. But if we're short-staffed, doesn't the breakage from those staff pay for the extra? Should kind of be
it
somewhere, in there,
can,
right?
But they get paid, the overtime is a higher rate,
Of course, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I think just what Lisa's trying to say, I mean, these are paper time
Just
sheets.
one conversation happening at a time. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what's going
And
on. back
I mean,
there.
I think ultimately what this comes down to
Talking to Lisa.
is two of our administrators brought forward information, trying to anticipate that we would have higher needs for overtime and tried to make sure that was in the budget. And we did not anticipate this would become such a big issue. We wouldn't have brought it forward if we did not think this was something we need to anticipate and plan for. So, I mean, we're sorry about the confusion here, but we really were hoping not get gummed up in this evening. And we can do our best, but to Sonia's point, this is extra work for Lisa and her team. This one individual request. It is, just to make that point. So we would like guidance when these type of requests come in from the board as a whole, if this is the work you guys want us to do.
Sorry?
Can I finish? Yeah. Okay, Chris, that's fine. But what a board member is asking is for the analysis and in reasoning behind that position. And quite frankly, it should be based in numbers. It should be, all right, hey, last year we had out of our total hours, 30% were overtime. This is the number. We expect this much growth with this many people missing, and we're going to replace a person. The number will be this. Perfect explanation. That makes perfect sense. And I think in order to make a decision on a budget, you need to be able to answer those types of questions. You're asking for it. You should be able to articulate exactly what is the reasoning that goes behind that. I too, I'm not finished, Chris. I too have asked for things and got responses that were delayed. Most of this is public information. The amount of time, and it's generally from you, Chris, the back and forth on emails, you could have just answered the questions. There's no conspiracy to people asking questions. They're just trying to understand specific items and topics and things like that. So a simple answer would suffice versus all the back and forth and the I need the board's guidance. That seems to be the new thing. If there's something you don't want to do, we're going to bring it to the board and get the board to vote. So we don't do this anymore. Well, people need good information to make good decisions. Thank you.
Michael?
So I apologize for having a side conversation. I didn't realize it was that loud. So I'm looking at payroll right now, and in there it does state building check, 312, 10 hours. So you're looking for that information to correlate it with the overtime amount, right?
I am looking at to why they asked for $60,000 in overtime. And if you break it down, it worked out to about 1,800 hours. But I'm saying I wanted to see, why are they asking for so much money for overtime? I wanted to compare it to the, last year's number of hours. What are we working to justify this 60,000? And what we paid out. I mean, maybe they need more, maybe they need less. I don't know.
How long have you been using this payroll?
So this is effective July 1st,
So,
our new system,
Would-
which we do have the details for.
so would you be opposed to getting that detailed? This way you can see it and then just understand that, you know, it's not exactly what you want, but it will give you the information that you need to make that connection.
I'll drop off fiscal year 22, but I'm not gonna drop off fiscal year 23. And this wouldn't have been an issue, you know, if we had just, I mean, I asked for this on December 13th. I mean, and I got reasons for overtime. I understand that. But I think it's a valid request and it's not a complicated issue. It just number of hours and the cost of overtime. That's all. That's all I'm asking. And it's been blown out of proportion.
Sarah, then Michael's the last one, and then you.
Okay, so as Lisa said, she estimated 20,000 per building, which I guess is just 3 buildings and not necessarily C. So 20,000. She just recited payroll, a specific payrolled employee whose overtime rate was $43 an hour. If you want to round that up to about 45 to consider payroll taxes that the employer pays. So 3 buildings, 20,000 divided by 45, it's just over 400 hours. Is it really unreasonable to consider that there might be 400 hours of overtime put in at each of our buildings?
How would you know?
Yeah, how do you know?
Because I trust our people.
Well, I trust them too, but I want to see the backup to it. I'm not questioning anybody's trust. This isn't about trust. This is about looking at a budget and being able to decide and looking at what they're asking and to make sure that we're presenting a good budget and for me to make a decision, Sarah. It isn't about trust.
Less than 1% of our overall budget is what you're nitpicking, and we've been
No,
spending
I'm not,
half
it's
an hour.
not about
Okay,
1%.
right. We're back and forth. Michael?
I think what I said was, I think the information that you're looking for could be answered with the year-to-date payroll. And even though it's not everything that you want, but I think you could extrapolate the number that you're looking for and why it was justified. Correct? Am I correct if I said that? If you sent me the payroll year-to-date, I could go and find that and extrapolate, they could find out why your reasoning for that, correct?
And to be clear, we have been responding several times in lots of different ways to explain how we arrived at that, so.
So I'd like to make a
That
motion.
is not true.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask the business manager to provide 2023, 2024 fiscal year, July 1 to today, payroll overtime information for custodial staff and send it to all of us, and that's it. That's my motion.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Maybe.
I think it's easier for you just to send it all, correct?
I will work on.
I'll second the amendment. Sorry. Motion.
Well, but I'm just saying, is it easier for you just to click the report and send it all, or?
No.
Okay,
There's a motion from Sonia, seconded by Chris Parker. Any discussion, Nancy?
What was the motion?
The motion was to provide the data that Michael's suggesting, which is the FY24 payroll data that is in the current system for custodial staff for overtime wages, because that is what the business office has easy access to, and it's running a report and not going through paperwork.
Well, this is my request and.
Well, that's the motion.
No, you can't do that.
Okay.
We've already done motion on the field. Anything else? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Can I clarify? The first time you read the motion, you said an FY23.
I said I meant
like
FY twenty-four, which started in
In July.
July
Okay, so
of
we're talking
23.
July 1st through December 31st.
Exactly. It's FY twenty-four data. It's what's in the current system. Okay.
Quick, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
I'm gonna go around the room just so I can clarify, because Terry kind of voted twice.
Sorry, I meant Nate.
Nancy?
nay.
Paul?
No.
Sonia?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Michael? Terry?
No.
Sarah?
Aye.
We are on to 7.1, the second and final reading of the personal recruitment, selection, appointment, and background checks. Each one.
For B20, there was, no big discussion when we had the first read. The only, item that had to be selected in was under, selection, number 1, was to say that the cost of background checks will be borne by the school district, not by the individual. And, that is what we currently do and what we want to continue to, have that done. Everything else is the same.
Motion to approve the second reading of B20.
Second.
Motion from Sarah, seconded by Sonia to, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 7.2, second and final reading, community use of school facilities.
So from E20, the issue that was brought up when we had the first reading on December 13th was under section 2G. And that was around the option of either that we have to decide either to allow the either to prohibit possession or use of a firearm or to permit it for a specific reason. And we reached out to our attorneys and their response was, I know we debated this with VSBA when they were working on the policy. It goes without saying that there is additional risk of liability if you allow guns on campus for any reason. That said, the option to permit is valid, particularly if you limit it to gun safety courses approved by the school, which falls under an exception to the laws around guns in schools. I think you should state that limitation expressly. And so, we just need to decide on which of those G options to keep in the policy.
I would make a motion to approve policy E20 with the allow firearms provision.
Second.
So there's a motion from Terry, seconded by Michael. Any discussion?
I think that under that, there's for other specific purposes, and purposes should still be in there.
Yes, that's one of the things I want to comment.
So that's just a friendly amendment to your motion because it should still be in.
So after the word instructional, the word purposes should also be there. And then my other comment on that same topic is e.g. gun safety courses approved by the school. That's the lawyer's recommendation, is to expressly say approved by the school. So I would want to include that as well.
Question, approved by the school or approved by the district?
Can you say the
Or
district?
approved by the superintendent?
It would-
Gun
it would be-
safety courses approved by the school, which falls under an exception to the laws around guns in schools. So maybe approved by the district is more what they meant there, because that obviously makes more sense.
In short, if we adopt this policy, the policies are approved by the board. That would be the district itself.
Yes.
It's not necessarily the superintendent. It's a policy that would be. It's only.
As an example, I would inform the board if we were gonna bring in one of these courses.
Sarah, then.
Just clarifying, because in our draft, other specific purposes is crossed out and is for gun shows. We're leaving gun shows out.
Correct.
Okay, so, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the friendly amendment, and then what you said, if we do is addition. So I just want to be clear, what you're saying is, shall permit the possession and use of firearms or a dangerous or deadly weapon for instructional purposes or other specific purposes, i.e. gun safety courses as approved by the district. No,
I don't think other specific purposes is there. I think
Okay,
we're
so
expressly
just-
saying, weapon for instructional purposes, e.g. gun safety courses approved by the district.
okay, and that's what the amendment is that you said?
And you made the second. So that's-
Correct, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, so we're back to, current business, 6.1 new hires. We don't have any.
No new hires this week.
Okay. 6.2, this is the FY25 budget approval.
Yeah, thank you. How we would, before Lisa and I just give some updated numbers to folks so you can discuss it. I wanted to invite, on behalf of the administrative team, Spalding Principal Luke Aether, and who I believe is online here, Karen Fredericks, our Director of Curriculum Instruction, and Stacy Anderson, our Director of Student Services. They have a brief statement on behalf of the administrative team to kind of put forward reasons for why we are really looking for the board and the community to support the budget this evening. Luke, are you on here? I think you were going to lead off. Yep, there he is. Thank you, sir.
I am. Thank you for your time this evening. Funding is how the district is provided money to educate our students. It's pretty complicated and overwhelming, and it comes from grants, reimbursements, tuition, federal money, state money, local money, and other sources. There's formulas and calculations that are all out of our control. Unless you know how that money is going to be used, why the district is asking for it, and what our students and community will be getting for their money, it's easy to vote no. I don't want my taxes to go up, but none of us do want our taxes to go up. And that's why it's important that we can clearly explain our budget. The budget, on the other hand, is what we use to plan and track the money for what we have for that school year. So on top of the basics like transportation, heat, electricity, garbage removal, we also have the privilege and responsibility of educating students, not only in academics, but life skills, people skills, and self-care skills. Education is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. We know that. It's preparing students to be productive, thoughtful, and informed citizens in a world that is changing by the day. Think of what has changed in the last 12 years. When this year's graduating class was in kindergarten, the iPhone 5 was premium, and TikTok was still 4 years away. So education is a moving target, and it's expensive to educate today's kids, preparing them for the unknown. Yes, it is, but it is an investment. The vast majority of our budget is made up of items whose cost we really can't control. We can control what we spend on supplies like clay and paint for art, balls for PE, calculators for math, and books for the library and English. We can control how many positions we have in the building and how those positions support and teach our children. We strive each year to develop a budget that meets the ever-evolving needs of our students and community while also respecting the hard-earned money needed to fund it. This year is no different, and we're asking for support to support our students by supporting our schools. And thank you for your time.
I'm Karen Fredericks. I'm the curriculum director here at the Barry Unified Union School District. The budget the administrative team has pulled together for next year is responsive to both our students and the taxpayers. A lion's share of the budget is driven by staff wages. These numbers have much more meaning than meets the eye. For example, outside of our classroom teachers, there are many supports in place that play an equally important role in helping to educate our children at Barry. One asset we have to offer in our district is instructional coaching. Research and experience show that instructional coaching plays a crucial role in enhancing teaching practices and promoting professional growth among educators, especially newer teachers. By providing personalized guidance and feedback, instructional coaches empower our teachers to refine instructional strategies, implement more effective techniques, and ultimately improve student outcomes. Instructional coaching also fosters a culture of collaboration and shared responsibility within our schools. This culture of support and collaboration plays an important role in teacher retention, as well as overall improvement of the layer of support we can provide our students. This is just one example of an important support that impacts our overall system. Interventionists, special educators, student support personnel, school counselors, and administrators, similarly, are all critical features of our educational system. I hope you can take these sentiments into consideration. Any noticeable decrease in the tax rate would require a large reduction in the very supports that are giving us a chance to support our students proactively. And I also might just mention that Dr. Doreen Dorfman, who shared in public comment, has passed along her paper that she was reading from. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, again, you can reach out to me.
And I'm Stacy Anderson, and I'm the Director of Special Services here in the Barry School District. As I've shared in many board packets across the past couple of years, the number of students who qualify for special education in Barry because of their special learning needs has increased in the past 5 years by 95 students, and in the past 8 years by 121 students. The social emotional needs and the anxiety levels we see in our students nationally and locally are at an all-time high. Students and teachers are still working to recoup learning losses that occurred as a result of the pandemic. To do this work requires an all-hands-on-deck approach, and we need the highly qualified and dedicated staff we have to do this work. Given the shortage of special educators we continue to experience, our literacy and our math interventionists have come to play a critical role in providing specific targeted instruction to students who are struggling, including our students who qualify for special education. This was not the case even just a few years ago, but it is what is necessary given our current situation and what is right for kids. Our behavior specialists, our school social workers provide important mental health supports and intervention for students whose social emotional needs impact their daily functioning in our school. As Doreen Dorfman shared earlier in her public comment, we are hopeful that continuing these targeted interventions can help us to eventually decrease the number of students that we're finding eligible for special education. In the BUUSD, we are continuously working to be proactive and to teach our students in a proactive manner. And when we lack resources, we can find ourselves in a reactive state. Because of the funding formula we're now working under with Act 127, to make any noticeable decreases in the tax rate would require significant cuts. And if we have to make significant cuts to our proposed budget, that would mean cutting positions. We would have to consider cutting some of the staff who are most expert at providing targeted literacy and math instruction, or staff who provide important social emotional supports and instruction to our students. And we just cannot afford to do this and still be able to meet the academic and social emotional needs of all of our students.
Thank you, Luke, Karen, and Stacy. What Lisa and I want to briefly do before opening up the floor for discussion, for questions, I want to reiterate a few points that my three colleagues just made. The biggest one is that what we have proposed here is a needs-based budget. Act 127 and the intent behind it is to put forth a budget based on need, based on the makeup and demographics of the community that we serve. You have noticed a significant increase in our student count, and there's a reason behind that. We have a very, very large number of economically disadvantaged families in Barry who, according to Act 127 and the new formula, are indeed simply more expensive to educate. Those of us who work in the buildings, who school leaders, teachers, interventionists, all of us in the day-to-day, we know the needs of the kids are increasing. For those of us who've been in the field for a long time, in my case, this is my 35th year as an educator, I've never seen the needs that our families and kids are bringing into our schools every day. The budget that we put forward here, in our view, is fiscally responsible and meets the needs of our kids, both academically and socially and emotionally. I want to share just a few things from our most recent narrative, a couple things that we want to share with you. Some of the information that we sent to the board on Monday afternoon at the end of the day, incredibly, has changed in the time since we shared those numbers with you. The Barry Unified Union School District has gained 16 students in that time. Lisa, if I'm correct, we've been told that that number is frozen now as of January 9th. So we're going to have to update these numbers, and I think we're going to have to be prepared that that's going to continue to happen. But as a result of those 16 students, our LWT ADM per pupil is continuing to go down. So I'm going to share this with you now and just do a quick run through to see if I can just frame this and give perspectives to some of the points, especially that Karen and Stacy just shared with you. So if we look, and I'm hoping the folks in the community can see this, we have added some new numbers to this, to the plan, but ultimately we're still at that 11.6 increase. If we go down further, we've seen this impact on the BUUSD chart a number of times. This number of 3703.38 is now frozen, we've been told, as of January 9th at 11,795. To be clear, what we are hearing is this figure of 11,795 per student is going to be among the very lowest in the state of Vermont. In some cases in our region, by $2,000 to $5,000 per student. We will have those comps to be able to share when other districts have been getting their budgets through, but we didn't want to do so prematurely. But this is what we're hearing. The important new chart that we wanted to share with you is the impact on the BUSD tax rate and property tax bills. To be clear, people's taxes are going up. People's taxes are going up all across the state of Vermont. I live in Montpelier. My taxes are going to be going up a lot. The question is, by how much and what do we have control over? If we look at this chart here, our proposed budget is coming in at 11.62%. And with the new CLA numbers that we have, with Barry City coming in at 76%, Barrytown coming in at 86%, we can now at least give a picture about what people's tax bills, the impact this budget will have based on your assessed value of your home. And you see we've got 100,000, 200, and 300, and to give folks a basic idea. With our proposed budget right now, if we were to look at a $100,000 assessed home, the education tax bill will be $1,595 in Barry City, $1,406 in Barrytown. If we were to make cuts from, and I just gave examples of 10%, 8%, all the way down to 6.5%, you can see on this chart the impact, the dollar figures that would have on your tax bill. To get to 6.5%, we'd be talking about $2.3 million in cuts. There's no way we can't make draconian cuts to positions by getting to 2.3. And then all the way up. If we go further down, you'll see for a $300,000 home, you'll see the figures as well. Yep. Finally, there would be tax rate impact if we get to 9, 8% and lower. My argument would be not significant enough to justify such draconian cuts. The tax rates you see here on the bottom row, 122, 122, 120, and 118 would be among the very lowest in the state of Vermont. I want to come from a place of empathy here. We understand Act 127 is confusing. We understand there are very valid concerns around the potential fiscal cliff coming in 2029, 2030. This is shared all across Vermont. But to Luke and Karen and Stacy's point, and everybody who works in our district, our kids are coming in tomorrow. Regardless of that, we have to be prepared to meet their needs for 24, 25. And we would argue that we are working within the spirit and intent of Act 127. and we are duty bound to provide this budget to meet their needs. So with that, I want to open the floor, and actually, Lisa, I don't know if you have anything else to share.
I have nothing more to share.
Okay, thank you. And open the floor to discussion and any questions.
Sure.
So I spent a lot of time looking at Act 127 because we've heard a couple different takes on it. You know, we are a district that's benefiting from this new act, knowing that we have a lot of economically disadvantaged children in our system. And I also took a look at some surrounding districts and how they're presenting their budgets this year to their people. And not one of these has actually been voted on. But one of the things that has been discussed in meetings here is this 5% cap. And what we know is that the proposed 11.6% budget increase, we have hit that cap. In order to actually fall below it, we would have to drop down to less than a 9% increase. And one of the things that I found when researching Act 127, because we've heard from some people who believe that we're taking advantage of that cap. In theory, I don't think we are. We're going 3 cents over the cap. Washington Central, they're going 8.2 cents over the cap. Montpelier Roxbury, 20.2 cents over the cap. Harwood, 17.3 cents over the cap. So I think it's kind of unfair to say that we're taking advantage of it. We're not. We're being pretty conservative. Another thing that I saw was that if the district does not receive the 5% cap in FY25, it will not receive the cap in FY26, 27, 28, or 29. That means we're potentially shooting ourselves in the foot if we do not hit that cap this year. And knowing what has happened in the past with us losing tax credits because we were forced into this merger when we could not come to a consensus as a community, I really am not willing to miss out on potential benefits of another legislative decision for the next 4 years. So I would recommend that we accept the proposed budget from the administration. We've heard that we don't know where the fund is going to be made up. It's lost revenue to the education fund. That's not on us. It could come from property yield, it could come from income yield, it could come from non-homestead tax rates. That's not up to us. That is a legislative decision that will be made by other people. What we can do is use the legislation that they've passed to our benefit, not taking advantage of this cap, using it conservatively compared to our surrounding districts, some of which also benefited from this act, and giving our kids what they need. Thank you.
Sonia.
The first thing I wanted to do was thank Lisa and Chris for the chart that shows the difference in the tax rate and property tax bills. I thought that was very, very helpful to be able to see by cutting 2.6 million, your taxes would be going down $54. And so I feel like it's, as Sarah said, it's not in the best interest of our students, and it's certainly not in the best interest of our community to not take advantage of the cap. And I would make a motion that we approve the budget at $58,880,532.
Second.
Sonia with the motion, Sarah with the second. Any discussion?
It would be nice to see that chart that you provided with a 2024 right next to it to see what the actual jump is from what we were last year to what we're going to be this year. Because we're talking about cutting from a budget that's increasing. That being said, I make my comment about the 5% because the issue is at the end of the day, that is going to be paid by us. I spoke to somebody at AOE. They said that if we spend over the cap, and when the time comes that the cap's removed, we will have to make up that money, or we will end up having to cut. And then we really start talking about reducing of services that we really technically couldn't have afforded. And I understand it makes sense to just spend with the cap, and I'm looking at you, Leona, because we had the conversation. But that it's to me, I feel that it's a fiscal cliff that we should not be participating in. And with that, I would not support it. And I do want to make a comment about the per pupil spending. The reason why our per pupil spending is so low is because of the numbers that we have. If somebody can show me what services are offered in other districts that we don't offer, I would like to see that, because I do not think that our low per pupil spending is causing services to not be in our district. But I just want to point that out as a comment on the per pupil spending. And that's all I got.
Oh, I want to piggyback on a little bit what Michael just said. You know, we talk about fiscal cliffs. I think anybody who had gone through the Act 60 and had experienced a lot of the other acts that followed, we saw rampant changes. In fact, over the first 3, 4, 5 years of that. I want to remind people that at one time we were classified, even in Barrytown, as being the receiving town, poor town. And in 3 years' time, we became what was classified as a wealthy town. I don't know how that happens in 3 years, but it did. The tax rates are interesting because we're only showing a piece of the pie. My understanding in talking with one of the city council members today is that the city council is moving to postpone their vote on their municipal budget until May, for good reason, to find out just where and what funding will come to support what is happening in this community. The tax rate issue that we have right at this junction in time is a combination kind of a situation. We talk about $100,000 house, but when you take the cost of tax rate right now as it applies to the city at this instant, it's $2.11 on the municipal budget, and we're talking about adding another $1.59 to that. That puts us over $3.80, or for a $100,000 property, $3,800. And it magnifies out because if we don't get the funding from the state legislature to help infill some of that stuff, it will become really draconian. We could see just in the city a $4 plus tax rate. And then all of a sudden that $100,000 house is looking at a $4,000 tax bill. The $150,000, Sarah, that you use as an example and clearly defined as, well, it will only be so much per month. Well, when you take that in combination, that all of a sudden makes that $150,000 house now have a $5,700 tax rate or a $6,000 tax rate if that tax rate goes up sharply in the city, as it might happen. And if you look at $200,000, and I'm going to point out something here shortly, a $200,000 house at this rate is $7,600 a year. For people who are struggling and we're saying we can't get housing and that trying to get affordability, that only compounds the problem. And if we get something over $4, that number jumps to $8,000. The $250,000 is an interesting benchmark because that means we have a $9,500 a year tax bill based upon what we have known right now. That could jump to $10,000. And when you look at that, that's like about $800 a month. That's a sizable mortgage payment. But more particularly, as I went online and looked at the number of buildings and houses are for sale in Barry City right now, the median average was $240,000. So to talk about $100,000 is just not practical. When you start getting up to 250, 300, 350, those numbers go up exponentially. 11,000, 13,000, 15,000. If you get anything in the city that you're approaching $500,000 for a property value, then you're talking about $19,000 to $20,000 range. That's a lot. But more particular to that, when we look at the increases, the monthly increases, in Barrytown, we have an even higher property cost to buying housing. To see a $350,000 to $400,000 house right now going for sale in Barrytown, and they go pretty quickly, even 500,000, it seems to be usual. We don't see a lot of 100, 200, even $250,000 homes left. So we have to have that kind of approach to that. But more particularly, when I looked at some of the properties in Barry City, I wanted to find out what properties were for sale at this juncture in time that were around 100,000. And I did find some. I found 6. One on Berlin Street, which was for 99,000, 2,400 square foot building, but it was built in 1920. I looked at another one, it was for $113,000 on Railroad Street, and that had 1,100 square feet, and it was built in 1917. And then when I looked at one on Brooklyn Street, just to get into this factor, there was $125,000 for 1,180 square feet, but that was built in 1889. See the pattern? Another one, the lowest one that I saw in Barry City at this point was on Shirtless Street, which was for 984 square feet, went for 99,000, built in 1900. And then on Orange Street, there was another one that was 145,000, 660 square feet, built in 1929. And the last one was in Berlin Street, 139,500, and it was 1,176, 1928. When I looked at the pictures on these things need full rehab. They really do. They're almost at a point where you would have to tear them down. But people have got to figure out how to pay that. They have the utilities, the insurance rates, the taxes, the transportation that goes with food and clothing. So we talk about doing the best we can for our kids. These kids live in these kinds of properties, and there's an expense to these families. So I look at it from that point of view. And I don't care if you roll your eyes. It really doesn't bother me. The point I'm getting at is that we should consider that as a total picture, not just partial. I don't want to get into the individual lines. I had an email over the weekend from one of our board members that chastised me for talking about legal expenses, $10,000 of legal expenses, taking it out of context and saying that I needed to owe an apology to an individual and that I had lied in public on that particular issue. $10,000, which is a fraction of this budget. My point and my question was, and it was Emily Willard, put it out there, I would have preferred to have that as either a telephone call or in-person meeting to talk about that, but to copy this to the superintendent and the business manager and then try to tell me that I needed to apologize, that's crossing the line. You really ought to look at these meeting norms because nobody's following them. That's all I have to say.
Any other board members? Mike?
I just want to point out that we're looking at draconian cuts in Berry City. We're not going to just throw out a 14% increase in our tax. We will end up cutting, which means furloughs and layoffs. Lisa, did you take into account the grand list drop when presenting the numbers? The potential? Well, no, the grand list drop to provide the graph. Because we're looking at a 3.9 decrease in the grand list increase. I didn't know if that was reflected in the graph.
No, we just took the tax rate.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna use my second time to speak to, just mention that market value is not assessed value. And then reiterate what I said, that if we do not hit the cap in 2024, we will not be allowed to use the cap, or sorry, in 25, 26, 27, 28, or 29.
Any other board members? Sandy?
Yes, I just want to say, make a statement. I have carefully reviewed this proposed budget increase. And I do support the importance of investing in education. My concerns are the impact of taxes coupled with other tax increases in our community. This is going to add a significant financial burden on our community. It is going to be crucial that we find a balance between funding education and ensuring affordability for our community. I'm asking we take a hard look at reviewing cost-saving measures to mitigate the impact on our taxpayers. I'm asking you to have further discussion and collaboration to produce a budget that supports education without excessively burdening our community. Thank you.
Any other board member?
My second time. One of the things that concerned me in looking at this stuff was to find out where do we sit in this county and in Vermont as far as our median incomes. You know, when I looked at Berry City and I tried to compare it to another community 7 miles down the road, which is Montpelier, we had a median income of about 44,298 and Montpelier had 71,163. This is from the US Census data. Right now, we have a poverty situation in Berry, and people are having a hard time making bills, making their payments. Businesses are going to be hit. They're going to be hit if this goes through like like Mr. Bolio had said from the tax department. Then they're going to see a 26-cent increase on the non-residential rate. That's going to affect apartment renters and so forth. The poverty level in Berry City, according to this census, was 24%. So we do have a problem here. It's not that we're being insensitive. It's in fact, it's all the more reason why we have to be prudent in what we do in light of what's coming on and in light of what's happened in the flood. Statewide, that average is about 10%, and in Montpelier, it was only 5%. So I'm giving you a comparison of two communities that are adjacent to each other. But more importantly, we have sustained, with this budget going through, basically about a 16.6% increase in these budgets over a 2-year period of time. That is not a sustainable track we need to be on. And there's nobody here sitting at this table that doesn't believe education is important. I paid dearly for that. But to try to take people who are less fortunate than us and throw this at them, it's not fair. And finally, there's another thing that is kind of quirky. Now I'm waiting to see what comes out of this legislature. And I mentioned it last time, and it was S56. If that becomes law, that's going to be about an average 10% increase on the income tax. That's on top of everything else we're talking about here. Vermonters can't afford to keep seeing these sharp increases. If we don't want to talk about ESSER and all the other things that were in that budget, I decided tonight I wanted to stay away from going through the budget lines because nobody wants to talk about them anymore. That's it. We're done with it. I would suggest that we move ahead with the motion and vote it up and down and let the taxpayers and the voters weigh in on this. Thank you.
Was that you calling the question? I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I don't want to deny anybody else the opportunity to speak, but yeah, I'll call the question if that's what's necessary.
Second. Right, the question has been called. But before, Chris Parker, Terry, and Emily did not have a chance to speak.
Correct, but there's a motion on the floor.
I'll withdraw it. I mean, if you guys want to speak.
I'm just giving you the opportunity.
You did ask if there were any more questions and nobody said anything, so that's why I went ahead with it.
I can do that. All right, all in favor of stop debate and voting now?
Nay.
Are you going around or what are you doing? I'm trying to understand.
I withdrew my second, so.
I know.
Wow. Wow.
Just continue.
Because I mean, I don't want to deny anybody the right to speak.
No one's speaking.
There's Chris had her hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
It's so close and I looked that way. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I wanted to say to Chris and to Lisa, especially given Act 127 and the even more complicated year that this is. The budget season is complicated every year, and every year that I have been on the board, there has been a huge effort to make sure that we and you all describe and explain things as clearly as possible to folks who don't have expert training in this. And this year's needs around that are even more complex, like the most complex practically that it really could be, honestly. And so I commend the efforts through narratives, through charts, through different visuals for people who are auditory learners and different processors. It is presented in many different ways to help folks see it very clearly. And I really appreciate how that's been broken down. And I really want to express appreciation for Sarah and the research that you have done and the things that you've presented, also extremely clear. And I really appreciate that. And I think that the folks at Barry probably appreciate that as well, to understand and to have things explained. And I appreciate that, to have things broken down in that way, so that nobody needs to feel like they're not intelligent for not understanding this. It's very, very complex. And so I appreciate all the efforts to make sure that folks really understand what we're talking about here. And I appreciate the administrators talking about the reality of what the educational landscape is in our schools right now. I go to work in a school every day, and I see this every day myself, and I understand that. And for folks that do not see this every day in schools, there's a lot of stuff that happens that is very unexpected. And if you think you know what school is like because you went to school, I can assure you things are very, very different now, and the needs are huge. And so to see the breakout of how this would impact tax bills, and the draconian cuts that would be necessary to get down to something to a 6.5%, something like 6.5%, is just very unreasonable and does not serve the kids in our community. And I say that as a taxpayer and as a parent of 2 kids in this district. Thank you. And as an educator myself.
I am proud to support this budget. Our administrators have worked hard to present it to us and made every effort to give us information and educate us about Act 127. I think this is a fiscally responsible budget based on the needs of our district, and it supports our students, families, and school community.
First a question. Chris or Lisa, did you get the number, the all-in number for this budget, all inclusive everything? Did we come up with that number? Not the 58, the all-in everything. The number we see on.
Going to be on the warning.
Nope, the number that we would see on the audit at the end of the year, the total number.
I don't have the number we're going to see at the end of the year.
Okay. Do you have a sense?
I could have you connect with Tyler, our auditor.
Well, we don't know what our other grants are. I mean, this is other money that we have, so we don't know what that money is. Only because we just finished the FY23 year with the audit with $68 million, right?
Keep in mind, Terry, that the grant funds are not funds that the voters.
I understand that, but are they dollars that get spent in our school system? Yeah, absolutely, right? So we just finished FY23 with $68 million. So I think it's probably fair to say that this FY25 will be 70 million or above. $70 million. I think that's an important number for people to hear. Okay, so there's more money than the 58 million that we're talking about. All I've heard through this entire budget process is emotional arguments and none based in factual, solid financial results and analysis and justification. The same old narrative, it's for the kids, and if you don't support this budget, then you must not support the kids. Well, that's not accurate. It's pure gamesmanship and manipulation. There are many very credible sources. Remember, trust the experts, outlining the financial challenges Vermont is faced with and will continue to face in the next few years. Somehow, though, these experts are now wrong, and we should ignore them. We've heard that we're nickel and diming our students, shortchanging them for a long time, and we've never spent enough on our students. All not true. And I would challenge you to provide factual, statistical, and financial information that supports those claims. Michael Booten just referenced that. What we can point to is dismal educational proficiency results. Again, FY23 just finished with $68 million in our school system. The argument that more money is the answer is not working and has never worked. It's time we start looking at a fundamentally broken education system that's supposed to educate children, but in spite of all the money, somehow is not. 75 cents of every dollar is spent on wages and benefits. That holds true for this proposed budget increase as well. In fact, flagrant salary increases again are being given to the highest earners in the district, prioritized over the people that work in our schools, cooking, cleaning, substituting, providing admin support, para-educators, and many more that work directly with students every single day. I implore my colleagues on this board, administrators, staff, students, and those in our community to demand a budget that really is responsible and does address the educational outcomes of our students and is sensitive to our community's financial ability to pay. Thank you.
So for my second opportunity to speak, I would like to address that it's not gamemanship, and I also would argue that there are some people on the board who are using numbers as manipulation and using fear as a tactic. As a tactic to try to defund our schools. And so I would encourage community members and board members to recognize that we are here to serve our students and to balance it with the needs of what our taxpayers can afford. It does not make sense for us to try to cut millions of dollars with absolutely no tax break for our taxpayers. That doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense. I don't know what planet you're living on if you think we should cut money and then our taxpayers don't get a break. Because we would have to cut millions and millions of dollars for our taxpayers to see any kind of decrease in what we are proposing. And I think that's part of the problem. We're talking about all these other numbers. We're talking about how much houses cost in Berry City. All of those things may be actually factually true. Yes, I'm not going to argue with any of those facts. The reality is, this is the budget that's presented, and unless we cut millions of dollars from it, we are not going to impact the tax rate that we are presenting to taxpayers. And I think we can all agree on that. I hope we can all agree on that. Those are facts.
Mr. Chair, I call the question now that everybody's spoken.
I think people want.
Is there a second?
Yeah, community.
Okay. I'll wait.
You're gonna wait?
No, I'm gonna wait.
Okay, Sarah, you've been waiting the longest.
Thank you. I want to kind of just remind folks, this time last year, we were talking about a 1.5 increase that would have funded everything that was in place at that moment. And there was quite the movement from many board members to defeat that 1.5 budget and then increase it to 5%. When we knew that the ESSER funds were going away, when we knew that these things were coming down the pike, and now here we are with an almost 12% increase, it's just not affordable for the taxpayers. And I'm really sick of people trying to hide behind, oh, we have to support our students. Of course we're supporting our students. Of course we want our students to have what they need to be educated. But I'm sorry, but what has been presented is not fiscally responsible. It's not taking into account everything else that the taxpayers are facing with upcoming income tax increases from the state of Vermont. It's so siloed and so short-sighted. You're not balancing the needs of the taxpayers. You're just not with this type of budget. Okay, and I feel like saying we told you so, because we knew this was coming when the 1.5% budget was presented last year. So I really hope that if this is the budget that gets put forth, that it gets voted down.
Yes. Garrett Grant. Sorry, Garrett.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I really just had a couple of questions because I've been listening to a lot of the data that our school administrators have been asked to provide. And so on the flip side, I would actually like to see some data from the folks that really want to are focused on cutting taxes. And I just wonder if you're able to provide me with any data showing how cutting dollars from our schools benefits our students. Will saving $50 to $140 per year lift families out of poverty? And are you also able to provide me with any data showing how cutting dollars, programs, positions, limiting salary increases, can you demonstrate how that improves educational outcomes? Thank you.
Jackie Rockstar?
Jackie?
Sorry about that. So I have a lot of questions. Thank you. It's actually Jackie Wheeler, and I can't change my Gmail name. Apologies. So there were so many things that came up, and I would just like to piggyback to start with Garrett Grant. If we need evidence of defunding public institutions and expecting a better outcome, perhaps we should phone the Burlington PD and see how that has worked out. First and foremost. Secondly, there was an example given about $100K for a home value, and it's very simple math. If you take that $100K example and times it by 2, then you'll get pretty close to that $200K home value example. So that I hope we figured out. And then I had questions about the grants. So we're talking about our grants. Help me understand, we have to apply for those. Is this guaranteed money? And can we bet on getting more to that 70 million, or are we hopeful? So that's a question. And the financial burden to the taxpayers and supporting the school without that burden. And I'm seeing a lot about taxpayers, of which I am one. Yes, it's for the kids, but it's just astounding to me that we do not understand the connection of a solid school system to increase home incomes and home values, the value of a school system to an economy, the value of a school system as an investment in our town, not just the kids. Of course, the kids should benefit. But when you have, oh crap, my battery's running low. When you have well-paid staff, when you have schools that are the envy of an area, you get rich people with kids. You get better teachers who then pay more taxes because they make more. They buy the 200, 300K homes. And it's disappointing as a parent and a taxpayer to see us fighting over $60,000. Because overtime's expensive, and they probably need 3 janitorial staff, of which one makes 60K. So they probably have included the missing income in the budget. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it. So I'm sorry. I don't want to get negative, but I encourage us. Oh no, I can get worse. I encourage us to focus on not only helping children, but helping our community by giving it something to look at. So whatever this looks at, I'd love to see the individual numbers. Somebody pointed out about not increasing administrator salary. Sorry, Chris. Great. I would love to see the paras paid more, because a lot of times when my kids don't go to school, it's because we don't have enough staff to keep it open. So I would like to see that. And yes, I would like to change the budget, but the total amount, it's very frustrating to be willing to pay and to be willing to invest in my own community and to not have that support from some of my neighbors. So thank you for those of you who are trying. I know that a lot of work went into this, and a lot of numbers and a lot of details. So I do appreciate that. So thank you.
Sandra?
Hi, I just wanted to first start out by saying, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The definition of equity is that every student has what they need to succeed, and I feel like this budget is trying to address that. I hear people talking about the test scores and the achievement. In order for that to happen, children need to be regulated and have what they need. Otherwise, you're going to continue to widen the achievement gap in the school, continue to have students that are dysregulated, coming to school needing those special services that you're going to have to cut. School is the solid place for these students. Students need a rock. They need the place that they can count on to the same every day. As we've said before, the homeless community in our own community is growing. A lot of students are struggling. We need to make this place a place that's safe, a happy place to come to, something that's reliable. By cutting things out of the budget, making it an unsafe place because some of our friends at school maybe need a little bit of extra help and we can't provide that. What are we doing? Please just take that into consideration.
Jeff?
Thank you. Mr. Hennessy said it best earlier this evening. Barry is an economically challenged community, yet somehow having a $9,600 tax bill on a home assessed for $250,000 is sensible? I think not. And frankly, the previous speaker talked about the homeless situation in Barry growing. We keep skyrocketing our tax bills. The homeless population is going to continue to grow at a huge rate of pace. This budget is absolutely ridiculous, over the top. It doesn't take into consideration any fiscal restraint at all. And our residents and taxpayers deserve a break. These huge increases year after year are becoming very burdensome for people like me, who I can afford to pay my taxes. I can't imagine what it's like to be somebody who has a household and makes 40 grand. To make 40 grand a year and have to pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year in property taxes seems to be sending people in the wrong direction. So it's too late, because this board, by a slim majority, has already made up its mind. But I hope that the residents in both communities, Barry City and Barry Town, I hope they're watching very carefully. I hope they're taking very good notes on who the board members are that support this huge increase. And I hope they let them know it on election day. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Should I stand up or do you think this is okay?
Move over a little closer for the owl. That'd be great. Thank you.
So good evening. I'm Rachel Van Vliet, President of the Barry Educators Association. I'm also a special educator at Barrytown School and a Barrytown taxpayer. I do want to thank the school board members for their work, and I want to acknowledge that we share the goal of a thriving public school system, or at least I hope we do. I think we do. I do want to remind the community a few important things, and I do hope that people are paying attention. Our staff are working hard every day. Our workloads continue to increase due to many staffing shortages and the increasing needs of our students. It's demoralizing to hear school board members mention cutting things from the budget, such as educator appreciation money and money for lunches on professional development days. That was last week. No wonder we can't attract and retain employees like other schools do. What do other schools have that we don't? Social emotional learning coaches, that's Montpelier. Board certified behavior analysts, that's Stowe. Registered behavior technicians, Montpelier and Richford. Social readiness instructional coach, Lindenville. Social skills interventionist, St. Johnsbury, to name a few. I want to remind everyone that an example of someone who has continually participated in the discussion and shared clear facts is Sarah Preja. We heard from Dr. Doreen Dorfman in public comment about the reading work done in the district. She shared some clear data about the work teachers are doing and the positive outcomes. The majority of this budget is not within our control. Just like every other district in Vermont, we face increases for a multitude of reasons that cannot be changed by cutting the budget or by voting no on town meeting day. While ESSER funds are going away, the needs of our students are not going away. Again, the needs of our students are higher than ever. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
I don't call the question.
I don't think you need to call the question.
Pardon?
I don't think you need to call the question. I think everyone's there.
Just make it official.
Thank you. Right, all in favor?
Are we voting on calling the question or are we voting on the budget?
Well, Paul did technically call the question.
Okay.
But the,
Are we voting on calling the question?
no, actually, Paul made but there was no second. to that.
I said second, if we want to be official.
Should have stayed away from it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're calling the question.
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Now we are voting, Sonia made the motion and Sarah made the second, and the original motion to approve the budget. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
I will take a roll call. Nancy,
Nay.
Paul,
Nay.
Sonia,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Michael. Nay. Terry,
Nay.
Sarah.
Aye.
I will aye.
Make a motion to approve the warning.
I'll second it, but there's amendments.
Well, let me hear your amendments and maybe I'll check.
I think the last line of Article 1 is incorrect. I think both Berry Town directors are for 3 years. I believe Paul filled in the balance of Renee's seat, and Renee was elected the same year Chris Parker was, and I think it's a 3-year seat. So I think it's 2 3-year seats
So
for
the
Berry.
bottom one is a 3-year. They both are.
It should just say 2 Berry Town School Director, District Director for a term of 3 years.
Okay.
So scratch the whole last line.
Yep.
And then the third line should say 2 Berry Town District Directors. And then the part under the tildes, Article 5, legal voters. First of all, Monday, March 6th isn't a date. March 6th is a Wednesday. And I also do not think we should be having an informational meeting on the night before. We have our annual meeting the night before, but I think we should have an informational meeting before Monday, the Monday before town meeting.
And if my understanding is, if the informational meeting doesn't need to be on the ballot, it's just the
Annual meeting?
The annual meeting.
Well, this
does.
says informational
Yeah,
meeting.
it says information. That's the day after voting day, election day, right?
Yes,
So it needs to be before, yeah.
yes,
Depends on whether you use Monday or the 6th.
yes, it's a bit confusing. Those two do not drive.
No.
We'll put this together.
So that, if it's an informational meeting, it should be, I would recommend a different day. And I think we had discussed at the finance committee,
Early February.
moving it to early February. So can we put that, an early February date on this instead of March 6th?
My understanding was what we had to have the annual meeting on Monday, March 6th. I thought we had to by statute have it the day before town meeting.
Yeah, it's usually right before, isn't it?
That's the annual meeting,
Right. So the informational meeting we can do whenever we want.
right?
So that's why Ina kept that on there for Monday, March 6th.
But that's,
So there's a Monday, March 4th.
Yeah.
And there's a Wednesday, March 6th.
Oh,
March 6th.
goodness. Okay.
and it shouldn't say informational. It should say the annual meeting will be held.
Okay.
Is Andrea Pullen, would she have information on that?
She isn't here, but we can definitely get this
She's
cleaned
on
up.
there.
and fixed.
She's
Oh, she
Andrew's
is?
right there.
Oh, okay.
No,
Can we ask her the
the
question?
described know that.
Why would we need to ask Andrea?
Because in the past, when we tried to get this done, right, we've always screwed it up and tried to get these warnings correct. And I don't know how many times we've sat on boards and she's chimed in saying, this is what is required, and she's been right.
Andre is no longer our scribe.
She's not.
No.
So we covered her too. Okay.
When were we gonna be? All right, she would,
Never mind.
These amendments we can have these fixed.
Sonia, were you done?
I'm done.
Okay,
So that would be my recommendation for an amendment to
I have
the,
one too.
Sure.
The last line, it says adopted and approved at a meeting on January 13th. Today is the 10th.
Goodness gracious.
Also received for the record and recorded in the books. I'm not sure if we want the 14th or tomorrow or what date they're either.
Also needs to change.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
795 on Article 3.
There's a lot floating out here at this moment. Okay.
These amendments and corrections we can have ready by tomorrow morning. We have it all. We've done reshare report.
We'll just need to go through it.
Yep.
You read it off for us and then
The changes.
we'll vote on it.
Okay. So the first one for Article 1, we are going to change. We're going to reduce the fourth line, take it off, and the third line will say 2 Barrytown District Directors for a term of 3 years. Okay. For Article 3, if approved, will result in education spending. We have to change that to 11,795 with those increased 16 students we found out about late Monday and yesterday. For Article 5, we need to simply change the dates. The dates are all to correct them. So January 10th is when the meeting happened. And we will have an informational meeting in early February. So we'll get that all cleaned up. Did I miss anything?
So Article 4, we're moving 700,000, and Article 5, we're moving 295,741. Those are still accurate numbers?
Those are still accurate numbers.
Yes. Did we discuss it?
Did we talk about it? Never mind.
We did talk about it.
Yeah, I don't find it on the list.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't just add that date in there, vote on it and just add it in later for the meeting. I think we should do that right now so that you have a specific date in hand. So,
But I think the question was, are we putting in here about the annual meeting, which is Monday, the March 4th, or the informational meeting and picking a February date?
My understanding was the informational meeting did not have to meet articles.
Right, so if we.
So we don't have
we
to
don't
even
need
have that
pick
in
that
there.
day right
So
now,
we have March 4th for the annual. meeting.
So you want to change the word informational to annual also in that under the first line of under the, so.
So on the adopted and approval of the meeting, the January 13th date of 2024 and also the January 14th, 2024, those dates are what?
10 and 11.
Or what?
10 and 11, today and tomorrow.
The 13th of January?
The 13th is going to be changed to today because we're voting on it
They're
today.
wrong. They're wrong. They're
And
just
then-
wrong call.
The 14th would be tomorrow when we all have to go sign it.
I just want to get it sorted out.
Sorry, the 11th, yes.
No.
And we haven't discussed the 700,000 for Article 4 and 5? It's already.
Yeah, that was in the FY25 budget.
So we've had this happen before, where we talked about the articles first because they're in the budget. But we voted on the budget before we actually approved the articles. This is a little ass and backwards, but that's what's happened here. All right.
So the motion's been made with amendments. I second?
I second.
Oh, okay.
well, the motion was made, I'm the second, where the amendments, but for clarity on that Article 5, we're changing informational meeting to
An annual meeting on Monday, March 4th, 2024 at
March
6 in the
Okay,
afternoon.
so you did change. the
Yep.
date. Okay, and that's all I wanted to make sure.
And technically it's not Article 5. It's just
Yeah.
information below Article
Yeah.
5. Okay,
But it's the warning and
okay.
underneath it, so. Yes, I'm still okay with that.
Sorry for the confusion, everybody. It's all cleaned up.
Okay, so I assume that was our discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, Nancy, no, Paul, no, Terry, no, and then Sonia, yes, Emily, yes, Chris, yes, Sarah, yes, and Michael, yes. All right, we're down to future agenda items.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yes.
the last issue, I'm wondering why the warning doesn't identify in Article 3 the percentage rate of increase in the budget.
Sarah?
My understanding is that Act 127 took out certain requirements and it's not required to be in there.
It would also, with the new formula, the number would actually be a decrease of 34%. And we thought that would be highly confusing to folks. It would be a decrease of 34% based on the LWT from last year.
Yep.
Victoria? Did you hear? I yelled it. So.
She's not muted.
Victoria, can you hear us? Okay, so move on. Yes. All right, future agenda items. Nothing. Okay. Our next meeting is January 24th, Spalding High School, and then February 14th, also Spalding High School. Oh, time. You know, it's the date. I can't control that. Executive session. There's personnel updates, and that is 1 VSA section 313A4.
Make a motion that we go into executive session and invite the superintendent and.
I don't think we'll need Carol for this. I mean, I'm sure.
Or just the superintendent.
I'll second that.
A motion by Sonia, seconded by Chris Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session.
Can we take a 5-minute break too?
Yes.
Thank you.